Here's the moves it starts with. And I'm going to play bishop to g5, attacking the knight here, because usually they play bishop to g6, and they're going to fettuccine the bishop. But first, I'll take the knight, and then they have to take back with the pawn and double up their pawns. So they play e6, and now the knight is pinned to the queen. And this is a wild game, so stay focused, because after c4, bishop to b4 check, block with the knight to c3, they take my knight, I take back with the pawn, and we have two pawns in the center here. A little bit of center control. They don't have a lot of center control. Their knight is pinned. And after a move like b6, getting ready to fettuccine the other bishop, I play e4. And this knight is pinned to the queen. And if I play a move like e5, the knight can't move. But they do have h6. And now my bishop's under attack. And I should just take this knight. Because if I go back to h4, now they have g5. Attacking my bishop once again. Knight's no longer pinned. And now it's attacking the e4 square, which is undefended. And I think I'm probably okay after e5, attacking the knight now, because once they take my bishop, now their pawns are doubled up and they're pretty weak, and I can just take their knight now, right? But no, the best move is queen to f3, hitting the rook. And then they have to play d5, and then you take the knight with the pawn, and you have a knight on f6 defended by your queen. But instead, I take the knight right now, and after they take back with their queen is activated, and defending this pawn, when I could have had a pawn right there with my queen on f3. But I missed that. Instead, now I play queen to g4 because I don't want them to bring their rook over. And I also want to target this pawn here with knight to f3. And they want to finish development, so they play bishop to b7. And they're going for a queenside castle since their kingside is opened up. And this also hits my g2 pawn, which is a critical target. And if they bring their rook over and their bishop and their queen, they could just take this. So I'm in trouble here. Not only because the g2 pawn is in trouble, but my king also wants to castle. And the only safe spot for my king is right where they have the easiest attack, and after bishop to e2, they should just play queen to g5, force a queen trade, but instead they want to finish development, and they play d6, trying to get their knight out, and they're still winning, and it's not getting much better for me. But now I have knight to f3, and I'm almost done developing. I can castle soon maybe, and I'm about to take this pawn back. So knight to d7, and now I should take with the queen here, better to take with the queen, but knight captures h4, trying to keep the pieces on the board. But after they queenside castle, now the rooks are connected, and they're about to come to the g file. I'm in trouble here. -2 on the engine, and now bishop to f3. I want to get rid of their strong bishop here. And after they take, I take back with the knight, and that's a little bit less pressure on g2. But now rook d to g8, and my queen has to move, so queen to h3. And their strongest move now is queen to g6, hitting the pawn and on this diagonal here. But instead they play queen to f4, and maybe they're looking at this diagonal. And I think really they just want to bring their knight up. So they did need to move their queen so that their knight can come up. They chose the wrong move, but I am still in trouble. And maybe the best move is castling. But I was thinking about how this rook is lined up with the g2 pawn, which will be right in front of where my king will castle to. And this knight's coming over, and they might double their rooks up. They might push this pawn down. Their queen's already here. And castling just feels dangerous right now, because it feels like I'm castling into their attack. But I'm also thinking about if I can just stay in the middle. And I do have a little bit of center control here. These pawns are well defended, but the e4 square is not defended. And the queen can just go to e4 to check my king. So I got to worry about that. And I also have to worry about this g2 problem. And really, I just want to play g3 to attack the queen, and then the pawns all defend each other. But then the knight would be undefended. They just take the knight, and there's also this e4 check. So I can't play g3 right now because the knight is undefended. I thought about, can I move this knight? And actually, knight to d2, a backwards knight move, and that defends the e4 square. So now they can't check me on e4. I can push g3, and the knight defends f3 and e4. But actually an excellent move here, maybe about as good as castling, but they should still be able to win. But try to find their winning moves, and it's usually a pawn move, but instead they're going to make a lot of piece moves, when moves like e5 or d5 will just break open the center and allow them to attack my king or force me to castle into their attack. But instead, knight to f6, not bad, bring the knight in, but now I can play g3. And I'm actually in a pretty safe spot now that I control the entire e-file. My pawns control the middle, they're connected. The queen can't really come into my king at all. And now the g2 pawn is not a threat. And with the queen under attack, they have to move the queen. So they go queen to g5. And another thing about g3 is now I can slide my queen to g2, hit this diagonal, and maybe threaten the king. But I figured, why not just play f4? Attacking the queen, just a free move, right? The queen has to do something like go back. And there's just no good queen moves. So just f4 comes for free, and then I castle. Just a free move comes with tempo, right? But no, queen to a5. Oh my goodness. What am I doing? -4 now. Brought it back to a draw, and it's once again losing, and I had to figure out what to do now. And the best move is just rook to c1, but then the a pawn's not defended, and I'm thinking maybe I can just hold on to everything with knight to b1, defending the pawn here. But this is not looking good. Putting my knight back on the starting square, this rook is still stuck in the corner, only defending this pawn. -6 on the engine, and now they play knight to e4, doubling up on the pawn here. But now I can play g4 because the knight's not defending the square anymore. And now my queen defends c3. So maybe I'm holding on, but no. Knight to f6. Now they're double attacking the square again. So rook to g1, and I'm defending the pawn now. But now their queen goes to a4, and it's about to come in. It's also hitting the c4 pawn. What do I do now? Well, now the knight can move. So knight to d2 defends the pawn here. And I just have to let the queen come in. And it's not actually that bad because after queen to c2, they're making some mistakes. d5 was the best move. They just need to break open the middle here. Also moves like h5 at times will force open the g file here and just let their rooks come in. But now I have to play the best move. And what's the best move here? And I really just want to attack this queen somehow, get my rook in front of the king, but I don't want to give up this pawn. So I want to bring this rook over. So I overlooked something here, when I really should have played something like rook to g2 or queen to f3 because the knight's about to come to e4. But I played king to e2. Mistake here, -3, because now knight to e4. Hitting my knight and my pawn here. I can't defend both. Can't move my knight because it's pinned. And my best move is queen to d3. But I play queen to e3. And now they can crush me with a pawn move. Just move a pawn, f5, and something's going to open up here. I'm going to either take and they're going to open up for their rook, or push and they're going to open up files here. I'm just in trouble. If they play the right moves, and knight captures c3 is a good move, still -2, but not the best move. But my king's in check and I have to move my king, so f3, and they're up a pawn. Their queen and their knight have infiltrated. Their rooks can break open the g and the h file and come in. Engine says -2, should be winning for a grandmaster, and a grandmaster would probably play knight captures a2 here. But this is a very complicated game, and we started with 15 minutes each. And now they have 2 minutes and 42 seconds, and I have 8 minutes left. I've been playing a little bit quicker, so I have a lot of time to think now. And I want to play rook to c1, hitting the queen and the knight. And I might be able to make something happen with the rook in front of the king. And maybe they don't see knight captures a2, or maybe they want to play it safe, and they play knight to a4. And now it's a draw. Once again, I brought it back. It looked like it was hopeless, but it's back to a draw because of the great move, rook a to c1, hitting the queen, putting the rook in front of the queen. And after queen to g6, lining up once again on the g file, now I just have to break open the king here. And how do you do that? Just queen to b3, but not d5. Now you're losing again, -5. Now the rook can just come to the e file because the file's about to open up. Now we trade pawns and the file's open, -5 on the engine. I'm in trouble, but I think I might have an attack here. So after rook to e8, I play queen to a3, hitting the knight here, but it just keeps getting worse for me. -7 now, and it's basically game over after a move like h5 or knight to c5, but instead b5, defending the knight that's on the edge of the board. I guess they didn't want me to take on a7, but the real threat here is on the c file, and can you see it? And I want to make them move their queen, so I play f5 here, attacking the queen, and the queen only has 2 moves because it has to defend the d6 square. So queen to f6, and now I attack the queen with knight to e4. And where does the queen go? It has to defend the square, right? And I'm about to fork them, and they have 1 move that wins the game. And it's the brilliant rook captures e4, trading knight for rook. And at this point, I thought I was winning. I thought I forced them to give up material because I can just take back with the king here. And even though they play rook to e8 check, I figure there's no problems. After king to f3, I figure I'm safe. But once again, all they have to do is play a pawn move, and it's h5. This pawn has to defend this pawn, and that's the weakness. But instead, queen to h4, trying to play with their pieces instead of their pawns. And right now, queen to h3 check would force my king to move, and then they would take my queen. But they're forgetting about queen captures d6, and the pawn is pinned to the king. Cannot take my queen here. About to checkmate them. They have to stop it with rook to e7, and now it's +9 GG after queen to a6. Check, king has to move, king to b8. And now what do? Well, of course, all you have to do is play a pawn move, d6. Just play a pawn move to win the game. But instead, I take the pawn, and I figure I'm up +3 material. Now the knight has to block, and the knight's pinned, and I can just push this a pawn and take the knight. And I don't care about queen to h3 check because I can just block with the rook, and they can take this pawn. I don't care. I'm about to checkmate them. So I play a4, and it's a draw again. I think. Maybe. I don't know, the engine kind of has trouble with this, but it says queen to h3 is just a draw now. And with this rook on the open file right next to my king, they might be able to check me or force a draw somehow, but I'm not a grandmaster. I don't really see it here. Instead, I'm just going after this knight here, and they're going after pawns. They capture on h2. And now all I have to do is move this rook to e1, and they're forced to trade rooks. And once we simplify, I win the game pretty easily. But I play a5, once again throwing the game back to a draw, and all they have to do is play queen to d2, but they have 20 seconds left. And it's been a very complicated game. And what do? Queen to a2. And I just take the knight, and now I'm about to take the pawns, check the king, checkmate. But they can check my king with queen to a3. And where do I go? g2. I'm just going to run away now. And after queen to a2, I just put my king on h1. But now they go queen to a3. And they're about to checkmate my king. Oh my goodness, it would be checkmate. What do I do to stop this? I checkmate them. B captures c3. Checkmate in a few moves here. Do you see it? Now the queen checks the king. The rook defends the pawn here. So they have to move the king. And a8 is just checkmate. So queen to c8. And now queen to b8 check. King has to move to d7. And now I just promote to a queen. Checkmate. Good game. Thanks for watching the Bobby Bo Show. Have an excellent rest of your day.